62-year-old Lysander, semi-retired architect, reflects on his marriage to Marcella after she stated, "Your money is our money." Over 4 decades of designing enduring structures, he recognizes that the foundation, the unseen elements, are crucial. While he thought their marriage had a strong base with 28 years together and 2 children raised, change can be subtle until it's too late. Marcella is 55, an accountant he first encountered during his design of her firm's office building. She was intelligent, driven, and stunningly attractive, a memory from 3 decades past. Approximately 8 months ago, the first hint of trouble emerged. Marcella began discussing retirement in a manner she had never done before, with precision and urgency. She suggested consolidating all our accounts, investments, assets into a single joint fund, which I found peculiar but didn't give it much thought at the time due to my belief in permanence and commitment. However, during dinner one evening, she subtly hinted at her proposition by swirling her wine as usual before making her pitch. "Lysander," she said, "we need to start considering our golden years seriously. We're not getting any younger." I acknowledged this truth. "I've been looking at properties," she continued. "Lake houses, perhaps, some tranquil place where we can spend our final days together, just you and me. It sounds appealing, doesn't it?" After years of employment, child-rearing, and navigating daily life's turbulence, the concept of a tranquil lakeside retreat felt genuinely enticing. "Could you elaborate on your vision?" I inquired. Her eyes sparkled. "There exists a villa roughly a 2-hour drive from here, nestled by the lake. It's ideal, Lysander, perfect indeed. However, the cost is substantial. We would need to consolidate all our funds for the down payment and the lump sum at closing." I recall finding that expression peculiar. Consolidate all our funds, as if our finances were segregated. In truth, they had been, not due to mistrust, but practicality. My consulting income was sporadic. Large payments would arrive intermittently. We maintained a joint account for household expenditures, yet my business profits were channeled into accounts I personally managed. This had always been the norm, until now it seemed Marcella didn't mind, but she did now. "Our money is your money," she stated, extending her hand across the table to touch mine. "Hasn't it been long enough for us to stop tallying our gains?" There was a certain tone in her words, something I struggled to pinpoint. I attributed it to her enthusiasm about the house. "Give me some time to mull it over," I replied. In the ensuing weeks, she often brought up the topic. The villa, the lake, our shared future. Each time, she underscored the need for me to transfer my consulting earnings into a joint retirement account she had prepared. Each time, she reinforced that "your money is ours." Phrase gradually shifted from expressing unity to becoming a recurring refrain. A chant she seemed to be incanting. I found myself scrutinizing details more closely than usual. Small things. She was more guarded with her phone than typical. She had recently increased her book club meetings to twice a week, but she seldom appeared engrossed in any reading material. She bought new clothes that I didn't recall her purchasing before. I am, as I mentioned, not inherently suspicious, but I am perceptive. You wouldn't have 4 decades in architecture without learning to spot structural issues, and a problem like that surfaced one Tuesday afternoon. Marcella had gone to get her hair styled. She left her iPad on the kitchen counter where we both casually used it for recipes and similar tasks. I picked it up to check the weather, and her email was still open. I should have closed it, but a subject line caught my attention. "Villa closing, final steps." Some instinctive part of me had already sensed it, the part that had been noticing the cracks for months. I tapped it open. The email was from a real estate developer named Henderson. It contained details about the villa Marcella had been describing to me, including the lake property and her dream home. However, the proposed deed wasn't in our names. It was in those of Marcella and someone called Darien. I read it 3 times to be sure I wasn't mistaken. The closing was scheduled for 2 weeks from that day. $475,000 was the final installment due at contract signing for the house, primarily funded from our joint retirement savings. The bulk of the money was destined to buy a home for my wife and another man. I perused the email exchange. It spanned months, filled with affectionate messages exchanged between Marcella and Darien, discussing their future in the house I'd be financing. They had been together for 2 years. After reading through them, I remained seated at the kitchen counter for a while. The screen on my iPad eventually dimmed, the fridge hummed, a bird sang outside the window. A man in this situation often finds himself at a loss. Some might explode with anger, break things, or confront immediately. I am not that type of man. I create, design meticulously, and with patience. Each structural element is precisely placed. If my marriage was a structure, it had been structurally compromised long ago. There was no saving it. However, the destruction could be orchestrated and controlled. Purposeful, I reactivated the iPad screen. I captured each email, every message, every shred of evidence. Then I shut down the email app and returned the device to its original spot. Upon Marcella's return with her newly styled hair, I paid her a compliment, telling her she was beautiful. "Have you given any more thought about the villa?" she inquired. I returned her smile, having been married for 28 years, yet she couldn't discern my feelings from my expression. "Indeed," I replied. "Your money is our money. I will transfer my next consulting payout into the joint fund tomorrow." The triumph on her face was palpable. She had no idea that she was witnessing the mastermind of her own ruin. That night, I didn't rest. I spent it in my home office, the door locked, crafting a plan. The following morning, my phone signaled an alert. A large consulting check had been deposited into my business account, $340,000 for a hospital renovation project I'd been advising on. I pondered Marcella's words. 30 minutes after receiving the message that my funds were needed, I logged into my banking portal but didn't transfer the money to our shared account. Instead, I moved it to a trust I had set up the previous day, one bearing only my name. A trust neither I nor Marcella knew about and she couldn't access. Subsequently, I made a small deposit to our joint account, $15, with "for the dream" noted in the memo section. Marcella noticed the deposit alert that night. She thought the large transfer was coming later. She didn't ask questions as she was engrossed in texting on her phone, grinning at the screen. Over the subsequent 10 days, I stayed quite occupied. I reached out to Henderson, a real estate developer with whom I had interacted in the past. It turned out we had worked together years ago when I designed a small commercial building for one of his projects early in my career. He remembered me warmly. We met for lunch and discussed real estate investment opportunities. "Were you considering buying mortgage notes?" He mentioned he had properties with current financing that could potentially be acquired. In fact, there was a lake villa with an upcoming balloon payment. The existing financing was held by a small regional lender seeking to sell off some notes. The owner was a woman named Marcella, who co-purchased with a man called Darien. Upon expressing interest, I learned the mortgage note price was $600,000. With funds available in my blind trust and additional resources from investments Marcella was unaware of, I made the purchase. The deal closed on Thursday, with the transaction set for Saturday. To own a mortgage note implies assuming the bank's role, meaning the borrower owes you the money. If they fail to make payments or default on closing, you can foreclose and seize the property, a fact Marcella was not aware of since I had purchased her dream home's debt. She assumed I was at home unaware as she readied herself for her fresh chapter in life. The day of completion arrived. I learned this because Marcella informed me she was visiting a spa with her friends. She kissed my cheek farewell. Wearing a new dress, she carried a bag filled with champagne. "I'll return tomorrow night," she said. "Don't keep vigil, enjoy yourself," I replied. I watched her depart. Then I hopped in my car and drove to the developer's office. Henderson had consented to my attendance during the closing. He was cognizant of the predicament. I believe he was somewhat amazed by my planning. I waited in a secluded office while Marcella and Darien arrived. Through the wall, I heard their voices, jubilant, eager. Marcella's voice echoed with expectation. Darien's deeper tones were possessive, already asserting his dominance as if he was the estate's master. The closing papers were ready. Henderson explained the conditions. The $475,000 balloon payment was due on that day. Marcella displayed the certified check dramatically, sourced from their shared account, which she assumed contained my consulting compensation. Henderson accepted it and inspected it. Subsequently, he departed to make a phone call. Upon his return with a somewhat remorseful expression, he reported, "Apparently this check is unacceptable. Insufficient funds." Although Marcella wasn't physically present, she had envisioned this situation numerous times. Her face reflected confusion, then denial, and eventually dismaying horror. "This can't be," she retorted. "The account should have over $300,000. Henderson negated her claim, verifying only $15 in the account. The distressingly meager amount represented the dream for which they had worked so hard. Desperate to resolve the issue, Marcella negotiated, promising to deposit the funds within a week. She begged, debated, but Henderson reminded her of the binding deadline for closing. Failing to produce the necessary funds by that time would make her liable for defaulting on the contract. Consequently, she relinquished her deposit under its terms. Her saving of $100,000 was depleted. This sum, distinct from any funds connected to me, money she had been covertly accumulating for years, apparently vanished. Then Henderson uttered the words I had long anticipated. "Nevertheless, the property has a different owner now. The mortgage note was bought by a private investor who chose to finalize the deal. He's presently here to take possession of the keys. The door swung open. I entered the room. It's crucial to clarify one thing. I did not gloat, nor did I sneer, nor did I raise my voice. Such actions are not a part of my character. I merely walked in, acknowledged Henderson, and received the file containing the title deed and the keys to the villa. Marcella's complexion paled, not turning pink or red. It appeared as if all her blood had abruptly vanished. "Lysander," she breathed. Darien was standing next to her. As I looked from Marcella to me and back again, I could see him calculating. I could see him understanding that the value of his romantic partner had diminished to nothing. This house, our supposed sanctuary, is no more. She found herself bereft, still bound by matrimony to the man before them, clutching keys symbolizing their shattered dreams. Addressing Marcella, I stated, "You were correct on one point, the money was for this house, but seeing as I financed it, I'm taking the keys." A brief pause ensued, followed by a gaze at both of them. "You have 10 minutes to depart from my premises," I added. Darien broke the silence first, ignoring Marcella. He grabbed his briefcase and exited through the door without a backward glance, exactly as before. The disintegration of 2 years of perceived love took place in an instant upon becoming a burden instead of an asset. Tears streamed down Marcella's face. "I am not a heartless man, but I felt nothing, and that is what betrayal does, it strips you bare." She attempted to query me, her voice barely audible. "How did you find out?" I replied. "You left your iPad unlocked," I disclosed. 8 months ago. Since then, I've been planning 8 months of preparation. For 8 months, I constructed a barrier as she orchestrated her plots, unaware. She had no inkling of my countermove. Henderson cleared his throat. "Mrs. Marcella, Mr. Darien has departed from this building. You must leave too." He consulted his watch. "Mr. Lysander now legally owns this property, effective, roughly now." Marcella cast one last glance at me, probing my expression for any sign of anger or hurt that she could exploit. She found none. I had hidden it all those months ago. With a silent farewell, she departed. I stood solitary in the office, soon to be part of my lakeside residence. My lakeside residence. The house, initially chosen by my unfaithful wife and her lover, now mine. Henderson offered me a glass of water. "That was quite a moment," he remarked. I nodded in agreement. I looked at the keys clutched in my hand. "Architecture," I said, "is about maintaining structural soundness." "You demolished an unnecessary wall," he replied. The structure collapsed. He didn't grasp it immediately. That was all right. I did. The divorce concluded 4 months later. My lawyer proved exceptional. The evidence I amassed was extensive. Marcella attempted to challenge it, but the emails, the screenshots, the villa scheme evidence, it was overwhelming. She left with very little. I discovered that Darien, her affair partner, had relocated to another state. He never reached out to her again. By then, my children were grown adults, each establishing their own families. I shared the evidence with them. They were disheartened, but they comprehended. They backed my decision. I now spend most of my time at the lake house. Indeed, it is stunningly beautiful, exactly as Marcella had described. Fog rolling over the water in the mornings, birdsong heralding daybreak, tranquility abounding. Occasionally, I sit on the deck, pondering architecture, foundations, and the unseen infrastructure that sustains everything. My marriage was built upon a corrupt foundation. For years, it had been corroded by deceptions I hadn't detected. When I unearthed the truth, I faced a decision: let it crumble haphazardly, wreaking havoc in its wake, or carry out a calculated demolition. I opted for precision. Some may label my actions as revenge. I view them as rehabilitation, demolishing a dilapidated building to make way for a superior construction. My life now is peaceful, uncomplicated, truthful. I engage in projects that pique my interest. I spend time with my grandchildren. I behold the sunset over the lake from the deck of the villa I now own, the one Marcella had chosen for herself and her lover. Now it's mine. I don't harbor hatred for her. Hatred demands energy, investment, emotional involvement. I possess none of those feelings regarding Marcella anymore. However, I occasionally ponder whether she ever contemplates the moment things fell apart. The instance wasn't when I discovered her deceit. It was 2 years prior when she opted to deceive me. It was the moment she scrutinized our shared life and deemed it insufficient. The instant she began constructing her exit strategy on a bed of falsehoods. She fancied herself the architect, yet she erred. I believe there's a lesson here for those who might be observing, for those in comparable circumstances. Trust your intuition. Watch for fractures. Detect when the base starts to quiver. And if you uncover that someone has been sabotaging the framework of your existence, refrain from fury, avoid panic, don't let them see you shatter. Instead, exhibit patience, precision, methodology, plan your retaliation like an architect designs a structure, every prop in its proper place. Each load-bearing wall meticulously calculated. Then when the opportunity arises, let it crumble. Let it collapse precisely as intended. I am 62 years old. I may have 2 decades of good life left, perhaps more if fortune smiles upon me. I aim to spend these days tranquilly, truthfully, and according to my will. The lake is breathtaking during this season. The morning mist descends, the birds chirp. Somewhere across it, Marcella is dealing with the repercussions of her actions. "Your wealth is our wealth," she declared. Indeed it was. "Now the house belongs to me. If you're viewing this and have been deceived, remember this. The pain is fleeting, so is the rage, yet the choices you make afterward endure. Choose wisely, plan meticulously, execute perfectly. Above all, never let them discern your intentions. This is Lysander. I appreciate your attention to my narrative. The villa, by the way, is quite charming.